The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you always.
You're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hi, I'm Andrew Hermiz, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. From movies, to books, to TV shows, and more, we're looking at the deeper themes and meanings found in Star Wars. Today, we'll be discussing Tales of the Jedi, specifically the Count Dooku episodes. And joining me today is Josh Beeghley. What's up, Josh?
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So we're coming off a pretty well-regarded, I guess, in most respects, I guess most critics and I think a lot of us here that are involved with the Secrets of Star Wars on the panel enjoyed Andor. I can speak for myself and say that I enjoyed the series quite a bit, and but now we're taking a break from that until we get a season 2 of Andor. And there'll be plenty in between that. And one of those shows is Tales of the Jedi, something that got released. I think, I don't remember when it got released. I think it was either around the same time as Andor or in the middle of Andor. I forget the timeline of it, but
I think it was after a few episodes.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Like after the first arc-ish.
Yeah. It's an interesting series, at least conceptually. We get to have a sort of deeper dive into Count Dooku and his backstory, and also with Ahsoka. Two popular characters. I would say Dooku, obviously not quite as developed as Ahsoka's character in Star Wars, I guess, live action and animation. But it's one of the more intriguing villains in the Star Wars universe. We get to see sort of the origins of how he rose to become a villain and switch over to the dark side. We get to see some of his days as Qui-Gon Jinn's master, and getting to see a side of him we've never really seen. Just going off of the prequels and what we get there. We get 3 episodes dedicated to him. We get 3 episodes dedicated to Ahsoka, and on next week's podcast we'll be discussing the Ahsoka episodes. But yeah, just your overall thoughts on the series. What did you think of these 6 shorts that we got before we dive into the 3 Dooku specific episodes?
Oh, I absolutely love them. So I'm probably one of the younger people on the podcast, and so like my childhood was watching like the Clone Wars and the prequels.
Oh yeah,
and just seeing them sort of come back and developing those stories a little bit further was really nice to see, especially in the animation style that I would come home from school and just turn on the TV and just watch on Cartoon Network.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm not quite as young as you, but I'm young enough to where, I came in with the prequels and Clone Wars and all that. So I'm kind of in the same boat as you are. I really enjoyed it. I like how there were kind of just bite-sized episodes. Mm-hmm. Because, a series like this could easily, have a lot of filler episodes and lose focus on the sort of characters that they wanted to take a deeper look into, and especially with a character like Dooku, like I mentioned, we don't really have a lot of backstory on him in the live action or animation universe. So it was nice to get to see some depth added to his character, some because when we meet him in the prequels, it's like he's a villain. He's doesn't have a lot of screen time, but the screen time that he does have, he does have quite a presence in the prequels. He's played by a brilliant actor, and you could see that there was obviously history between him and Qui-Gon's character, and getting to see Ahsoka as well, getting a little more backstory and depth into her character. It was a great series. It was an easy watch. I think it was smart for them to release it during a series like Andor, where it's not really competing with it. It's something you can kind of watch. You watch all 6 episodes in an afternoon, or just kind of watch them on your own time. I kind of, when it first came out, I just kind of watched them, whenever I had time, and it was easy to rewatch the Dooku episodes today to prepare for this podcast. But for like all the reasons you said, I enjoyed the animation style. I enjoyed the stories that they told, and for shorts and for being animated, there was a lot of emotion packed into these stories, especially in the final Dooku episode.
Certainly.
Yeah, so I really hope they do more of these with different characters. I hope this was successful enough for them to want to do it again at some point. So I would very much look forward to that. So yeah, really enjoyed it. So the first we're here to talk Dooku, and in the first episode that we get Dooku, it's the second episode of this series, and it's called Justice. It opens with Qui-Gon and Dooku on a rescue mission. The son of a senator has been kidnapped, and they're just there to save this so-called son of a senator, and it's not as the situation is not as it gets a little complicated. I mean, they get to this town, and they realize that the townspeople were basically in on this abduction, and they Dooku realizes that, okay, this senator is pretty corrupt, and they had a reason for this sort of abduction. It was kind of like a last resort thing that they had to come to. So you see this sort of seeds of Dooku sympathizing with, these, I guess you could call them rebels, rebelling against the quote unquote system, the Republic, the Senate, and Dooku stood with the people, and he said, we serve the people of this republic, and the senator argued that the Jedi exist to serve the Senate. So Dooku had a major problem with that, and Dooku was easily took on the senator's forces, and you see him tapping to the dark side. He almost kills the senator. So we get a little taste of that in this episode. So in this first one, we get sort of a crash course into what will eventually turn Dooku over to the dark side, and it comes from a very sympathetic sort of place. It's people being treated unfairly that could trigger anyone. And we see here where it triggers him in a way that allows him to sort of access the dark side for the first time, and dabble in that area. So what did you think of this first episode, and all the events that took place?
I thought it was really interesting. I mean, just sort of like the main sort of aspect of it was Dooku recognizing the corruption of the Senate I also thought it was really interesting in the sort of like bar scene, I guess you would call it, where he's like, let me make my intentions clear, puts his weapon on the table. He's like, I'm here for this.
Right.
Which, I mean, like, for a peacekeeper, it seemed very interesting to do. But yeah, it was sort of just continuing on the lines of seeing him, like having him acknowledge like how much corruption in the Senate there was. But then also sort of there was Qui-Gon, his apprentice, and sort of seeing how they took two different approaches to it. Dooku immediately went to anger and disgust from it and wanting to kill the senator.
Mm-hmm.
And then Qui-Gon was trying to keep the balance, keep his master calm, and have like the son save him, because like obviously what they were doing was not okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, it was interesting. Yeah. With Qui-Gon, you know, having the son go and intervene and save his father, the senator, where Dooku's just on the brink of killing him. Dooku realizes that, you know, he even admits to Qui-Gon that that Qui-Gon acted wiser than he did that day. So he's not quite yet fully dark side Count Dooku. So there is a shred of hope for him. Obviously, that hope is lost because we know how his character ends up. But we see the sort of thing we see in a lot of Star Wars characters. It's that classic like battle between the dark side and the light, and trying to figure out, like, you know, is the Jedi way the right way? Is when you see these sort of injustices happening to people, it's very tempting to go to the dark side. It's the most classic Star Wars lesson you could tell. It's when you could solve things so easily, seemingly, by turning to the dark side and not being able to turn the other cheek, or, you know, be the bigger person that the Jedi way sort of encourages. It really does a good job of showing that sort of struggle that he has. And it adds complexity. It's like, okay, this guy obviously was coming from a good place. He wasn't always this sort of menacing, mean villain. And this episode does a good job of just establishing that. So I think it was a good way to start out.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree to that one. It set him on the path without directly making him a bad guy immediately. Sort of to like slowly show his descent still in a very short span of just like, hey, he's starting to not enjoy like how the current state of like their entire government and how their whole government, how their whole operation is working, because it's not just obviously the Senate, it's more than that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Andor obviously does a good job of this as well. It's just showing that you can look at people on both sides, and you can see like the people of this town, they had to resort to to do something so drastic as to kidnap the senator's son. It's because, you know, they don't know what else to do. It's again, it's a last resort sort of thing. And like, okay, who cares about breaking laws when people are suffering injustices, if people are starving, if people are, you know, there's poverty, you know, there's violence being directed towards them by the people that are supposed to protect them. It adds a dynamic and a complexity to the lore that you know, allows us to sort of have discussions like this and talk about, like, you know, and not everything's so black and white. It's not like, oh, the Jedi are just here to save the day, just going about it the Jedi way. There's people that are struggling out there, and there's no one to save them. And when you look at the Senate, the the senator specifically in this story, who was supposed to protect these people and put these people in a position to thrive, he's just doing the complete opposite, being corrupt. So it adds that empathy factor that we as an audience can sort of relate to and see that, like, oh well, no wonder like someone like Dooku ended up turning out to be the type of person that he ended up being. You can see very easily how this sort of corruption can corrupt a soul.
Yeah, and sort of so what that was like how little like the senators even really knew, and it took them like being kidnapped and actually brought back to like their home world to sort of acknowledge like we really haven't been taking care of them, and like how it now is like the son's mission, like the next generation, to sort of be the better person and have to step up. And again, that sort of also relates to Qui-Gon. If you look at it too, it's like he's also still having to be the better person over his master, who's trying to kill the senator.
Right. And yeah, and then obviously we know Qui-Gon is a heroic figure, and we know that's in his character to sort of act that way. So it's nice to see that, even though Qui-Gon had a master that was sort of struggling with his sort of place in, as a Jedi, and then how he was reacting to encountering these injustices. Obviously another one he's going to encounter in this second short that we're going to discuss. It's nice to see that someone like Qui-Gon was able to rise above that, and sort of not lose his way. And it also adds to Qui-Gon's character. In a way, we could see like, wow, like there is, even though his master was corrupted, it didn't allow him to be corrupted. So it just says so much about him. So speaking of the second short, this one focuses on a mission with Dooku, but with Mace Windu this time. And it's sort of a similar thing. I mean, they go to this planet called Raxus, and they're there to retrieve the body of a fallen Jedi. So like the first one, the people of the planet, they're not happy with the treatment by a corrupt politician in the Republic, and they lash out by killing a Jedi. And so Dooku and Mace, they fight through this ambush, and they realize that the security detail, not the people that are rebelling, they were the ones responsible for the Jedi's death. And Dooku, he was obviously angry by the death of a fellow Jedi. But he saw the truth to what the guard was talking about. And he's being accused of being a lapdog for the Senate. Dooku, he didn't want to admit to being that, but he saw, like, again, where this ideology is coming from. Like he saw that there were, like, okay, this security guard, his ideology is a little faulty, but he can see that he has points, right? So again, we're getting just little bits and pieces of Dooku's sort of turn. He's like, again, he's sympathizing with these people. He's seeing, like, again, like with you cannot trust the Republic. You cannot trust these politicians. And then what kind of boils him over more is that, you have Mace Windu, who's, the perfect Jedi. He follows orders without question, and he gets promoted to the Jedi Council. Okay, so that we see that push Dooku further away from the Jedi Order. So all these things are starting to pile up. So what did you think of this this second episode of Count Dooku?
Yeah. I thought of it more as an episode regarding the corruption of the Jedi this time.
Sure.
So, the guards, the Senator's guards were saying how the Jedi were Senate puppets doing their bidding and stuff. And so it sort of defined like what is actually right, like what the senators are saying, or these people who actually need help while the senators out here making profit off of their world. And obviously Windu got the seat on the council, and so it sort of helps solidify that in Dooku of like they don't have the right ideals. They're more worried about sticking to the mission, doing what they asked rather than actually finding out what is truly right in the situation. And then I also like the little prison scene in the episode where Dooku was actually talking to him and trying to get more information, and he was like, "You were absolutely right in what you did, even though it killed a Jedi. Like you're trying to bring about change and trying to do what is right." Just sort of like keep on developing the fact of the Senate got corrupt. Anyone who's now tied to the Senate is getting corrupt, and something needs to happen about it.
Yeah, it really does, put the Jedi Order, like up to a mirror, and say like, oh, someone you see like where Dooku is sort of coming from is like, well, what are we doing here? Like, why are all these injustices happening? And we seem to be a part of it. We seem like like you said, like they're puppets. They're just doing the bidding of the Senate, and it's the people in the Senate that are corrupt. It's sort of backwards. And if you balance that with someone like, again, with like Mace Windu, you see someone like him who just does everything by the book and is such a loyal part of the Jedi Order. He obviously ends up taking the council seat that the fallen
Master
Jedi Khatri see on the council. And obviously, we find out at the end that that he was surprised that he was appointed that seat. He didn't know that was coming, and Dooku was like, what? Why was it? Was I? Was wondering if he would be a choice for that seat. And Windu says Windu followed the rules, and Dooku didn't. I mean, he interfered in a way that led to Senator Lyric's death. And ultimately, that's probably what cost him the seat. So again, you're seeing like it's a good balance of like, well, I can see where Dooku's coming from. Like, obviously, there's something that needs to happen between the Jedi and the Senate. He has that sort of forward thinking. Because we eventually know what happens, what ultimately happens, after during the prequels and after the prequels. But we also see that, like, Dooku, the way Dooku handles things isn't always the correct way, and it leads to someone dying, and at least Windu has to. Someone like Mace Windu has to work within these sort of machinations and work within the system to try to do good. And, someone like Mace is smart enough to know, like, yeah, like there are corrupt politicians. There is corruption in the Senate. You see a lot of scenes, like, especially in the prequels, like with Yoda and the Jedi Council, where like they have to sort of approach things very carefully and Not saying that all their decisions are perfect. They're clearly not, but they have to go about things in a way that are not going to get innocent people killed, and are going to resolve things in a way where it sort of you minimize the risk of again, innocent casualties, and trying to do things in an ethical manner. We see again, time and time again, the Jedi, the former Jedis, who were impatient and wanted to take things into their own hands. Obviously, Anakin being the ultimate example, like wanting to just have as much power as possible as a shortcut to try and make things right. Obviously, that never ends up the way that they sort of thought it would, when their intentions were still good. It usually ends up whenever you turn to the dark side, you're gonna have a dark ending, right? Unless you revert, unless you have some sort of redemption at the end. So yeah, I thought it was another good sort of episode that clearly shows that sort of, again, that struggle and where he's coming from, and empathizing with the townspeople, and realizing the corruption, and then we see a little jealousy at the end, obviously, with between him and Mace, and the Jedi Council seat. But yeah, I thought it was a good entry. Did you have any other thoughts on this episode?
Not really. I mean, it was just kind of showing, like, he's sort of slowly starting to fall more into the descent, considering now the order itself is crumbling and becoming corrupt. He obviously doesn't want to see that happen, but like going into the mission, he didn't necessarily know it was going to happen, but he has his own sense of justice in his mind and how he has handled things, of actually trying to understand the people and sort of being like a true moral person, of trying to understand and be empathetic towards the people. And that's not what the Jedi want, that's not really matters. What matters is the people up top. And it's sad to see, obviously, in a story, and it makes you sort of feel more empathetic towards Dooku, just because it's like, you see that like he's trying to do his best, and trying to take care of the people, but he just can't do that because the Jedi don't want him to.
Right. Yeah, the Jedi like to not interfere. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, because someone like the wisest Jedi know, like that there's just too much temptation to take matters into their own hands, and they're just much too powerful and much too tempted by the dark side to take that risk. So moving on to the final episode, aptly titled "The Sith Lord." We find Dooku at the Jedi Temple, and he is there to access some files on the planet Kamino, and he deletes all the records from the Council Library. So right off the bat, some shady stuff going on. And he sadly learns that Qui-Gon Jinn, during his battle with Darth Maul on Tatooine, he learns that Qui-Gon Jinn dies. And obviously that's Qui-Gon being his Padawan. That is like tragic news for him. And we see him, we see Master Yaddle in this episode. voiced by Bryce Dallas Howard, which is really cool. And we see Dooku visits when Dooku, obviously, when he realizes that Jin fought the Sith Lord Darth Maul, and then realizes that he passes, he visits. So Dooku visits a great tree, and then Yaddle joins him, and they meditate, and we see Dooku recalling a time that he used to bring Qui-Gon to this tree when he was a boy, and Qui-Gon was fascinated with the tree. He's because Qui-Gon was born on a planet, of steel and stone, like Coruscant, and Yaddle tells Dooku that the Jedi Council is leaving for Naboo to attend the funeral, and then Dooku says he's not going, because he says, quote unquote, he would not be pleasant company. So some self-awareness there. But he asks, Yaddle asks Dooku if he holds the council responsible for Qui-Gon's death, and he says that Jin has become one with the Force, and then it's time to let him go. And Yaddle questions if Dooku could leave without attending the funeral, and Dooku heads to the Jedi Temple hangar. He boards a speeder and he leaves, and Yaddle follows Dooku in her own ship, and Dooku goes to the Sith lair on Coruscant. Yaddle follows Dooku and parks nearby. So this is where we see Dooku confronting Sidious. He's like confronting him for letting, how could you let Darth Maul kill Qui-Gon Jinn? Sidious says that both of them have lost an apprentice, and that there are bigger goals here. Trying to get Dooku to see a bigger picture, and Sidious says that the galaxy will not be, this whole thing about there'll be sacrifices, and kind of brainwashing Dooku little by little. Yaddle infiltrates the building. Dooku says that Jin could not have been an ally, and Sidious said that Jin would have been an ally, and then Dooku asked Sidious if he's questioning his loyalty, and Sidious confirms that. So Sidious that requested Dooku to delete the files on Kamino, and Dooku says he's done everything he wanted, and he says he's gonna ask him more. Ask him to do more because if he wants to succeed, and Dooku admits that he's betrayed everything and everyone he's known. Sidious compliments him on his loyalty. Yaddle is hearing all this. Dooku again, he's upset that many had to die because of all this, and Sidious tells him that's the price of freedom. Then Yaddle finally interrupts. Sidious asks Dooku if he's betrayed him, and Dooku says that that's not the case. And Yaddle's trying to reason with Dooku. Tells him to help her to forget about everything you've done. Just help me out here. Dooku points out that she's aware of his actions, and by being in the service of Sidious, and then there's this whole thing where Sidious is telling Dooku not to believe Yaddle. Yaddle tells Dooku that hey, you can make up for any of these crimes. Just help me here. Help me take down Sidious. And Sidious reminds Dooku that that he's disillusioned with the Jedi. He's blindly serving the corrupt Senate, and it's all these little like things that we saw in these last two episodes, like bringing up the corruption and like he needs to be loyal to to Sidious because there's a bigger task at hand, and that he needs to kill Yaddle. But Yaddle's still like imploring, like, hey, we can still make things right. Then we get the big lightsaber duel. Yaddle is still like, saying like, I'm on your side, and that, that she stepped down from the council, and saying Dooku was right about so many things, like, again, about the corruption, and like, Qui-Gon didn't have to die. But Dooku, Yaddle hides, and Dooku uses the Force, pushes the starship that she's hiding behind. Sidious laughs because he knows what's about to happen. They're in this lightsaber duel. Dooku asks her if she's heading back to the council. Yaddle says that it's Dooku. Dooku's like saying, "Oh, you're gonna run back to the council." Yaddle's like, "No, you're the one that's running to the dark side, to Sidious." And they have this intense lightsaber duel, and Dooku uses the Force to lower the gate and crushes Yaddle to death. Sidious tells his now apprentice that he's done well, and tells him to rise. And but Yaddle survived. Uses the Force, lifts the gate, shines a light on Dooku. The wounded Yaddle stumbles into the hangar and falls. In her last moment, she looks up to Dooku, and when Dooku says that he only wants to bring peace and order to the galaxy, Yaddle counters that so many have already suffered for what he calls order. Dooku offers to bring her peace and strikes her down with her lightsaber, killing her. And Sidious watches in the darkness. So that is sort of a beat by beat rundown of the whole episode. I wanted to focus on this one because this one, obviously, it's just packed with so much, and there's so much emotion there. Obviously, we have the death of Qui-Gon, and we have, we see Sidious's involvement here, with his sort of corruption of Dooku, and we see how he uses again all his good intentions against him. And we see Yaddle trying to, clinging on to that last bit of hope before Dooku completely turns, to try and get him back and to defeat Sidious. But obviously that was not the case. So what did you think of this episode? What did you think of the final story we have of Count Dooku, where we see the complete turn towards the dark side?
I really enjoyed it. I liked sort of like the small things in the beginning, before obviously the passing of Qui-Gon, where like they had that small little interaction. He was like talking so highly of how Obi-Wan is there now as his apprentice, and he was like, I'd love to meet him one day. And then obviously the first time they meet is in Attack of the Clones, whenever he gets trapped.
Yeah.
And it was just it was a nice little like Easter egg to that one, of sort of being like, you always spoke so highly of you. I really liked that, and I enjoyed the rest of the episode sort of at the tree with Yaddle, how he has to let go, and he's following the Jedi way of not having attachments, because you're not supposed to be attached to like your apprentice and like a son kind of thing. And he definitely, I think, blames the council for the death of Qui-Gon, which also probably doesn't help. But I don't know. It's just that idea of him actually still trying to follow the original Jedi way of that. Like so many of them have actually lost. It's time for him to move past the death. And then going into the fight, the fight scene. Palpatine's always questioning his loyalty, because obviously that's how the dark side works, is whenever the time comes, the apprentice is going to kill the master and take his place. So he's always going to be questioning and making sure that he's truly loyal to him. Palpatine told Dooku that he had a greater loyalty to sort of like just bring order and not actually to his master. He's using his master as a means to get there. Because all he wants is just to restore the peace and have the people of the Republic be happy. I thought it was also a little bit ironic too that he was complaining to Palpatine about corruption whenever Palpatine is the one causing all the corruption. I don't know, there's just a little bit of irony in there, and I was like, why would he tell like the Dark Lord of the Sith about corruption? He's like, he's the one who invented. But then whenever Yaddle showed up, she sort of acknowledged that the council was doing wrong and that she was actually going to listen to Dooku's words, and that's why she stepped down from her spot. And then it didn't really work out so well for her.
Unfortunately.
It was nice to see Yaddle too as a character and sort of develop more. Just sort of bringing in one of those like background characters you saw in the first episode. You're like, who's this person? And then you get a nice little story.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed that. Yeah, Yaddle was definitely a pleasant part of this episode, and getting to see more of Yoda and Grogu's species. Someone outside of Yoda and Grogu. Getting a little backstory and some depth into that character is a very pleasant sight. And obviously we see her serving a pretty crucial moment in Dooku's character arc. You could say obviously the full turn to the dark side was when he kills her. And yeah, I mean, the episode was great. Like you mentioned, it packs a lot of emotion, and there's a lot of cool Easter eggs. Obviously, with that opening with that interaction between Qui-Gon and Dooku during the Phantom Menace, and it has a good job of showing that, like, Dooku, obviously, like deleting those files. He's doing stuff like shady stuff, like in the shadows.
But he did it so open there too, because like he just walked down some random aisle, and just deleted the file, and no one was there. Well,
he's not supposed to be there, so like no one dares to go to that part of the library. Mm-hmm. He's doing some shady stuff, and so again, it's throwing, again, these are shorts, and it's trying to tell like this sort of journey of Dooku from going from Master Jedi to Sith apprentice. So yeah, obviously for the sake of time and storytelling, we're getting these little bits and pieces, and it started with him questioning the Jedi Order and seeing corruption happening to innocent people, at the hands of the Senate. And then we see these little tidbits of him doing shady stuff like deleting the location of Camino. And then we see him with Sidious. And then obviously the interaction with him and Yaddle, where he sort of unleashes his and sort of vents about like all his frustrations with the council and how he has this corrupted view of how to achieve peace, by working with someone like Palpatine, and thinking that that's gonna make things better, and Yaddle imploring and trying to, it's, again, we see this with a lot of we see it with Obi-Wan and Anakin, where Obi-Wan is desperately trying to when Anakin's at near his full turn, Obi-Wan is grasping at any sort of last hope of good in him. We see Ahsoka do the same thing with Anakin. But like Dooku says in this episode, I'm afraid it's too late. It's always, whenever we see a Jedi in this sort of like situation, unfortunately, a lot of times it's too late. They're just too far gone. And that's obviously the case here with Dooku. I thought, it, again, for a short series, with the emotion that it packs, and with the Easter eggs, and obviously it's surrounding events we're all familiar with, from the prequels, like Phantom Menace, and everything surrounding Order 66. It's nice to always revisit that era and sort of see, get a deeper understanding of the Jedi's, their self-righteousness was really the cause of Dooku's loss of faith in the Republic and the Jedi Order. It really, he wasn't so much corrupted. He was this, he just, again, has sort of that savior complex, thinking that he knew better, and that he could do things differently. But unfortunately, he chose to be in cahoots with someone like Sidious, and we all know how that usually turns out. So yeah, I thought it was a great arc for him. It makes him an even more intriguing villain. If you go back and rewatch the prequels, it adds sort of another layer to his character. So yeah, all in all, I enjoyed it, and I can appreciate his character a little more.
Yeah, that episode also, I think, really ended it well going into the prequels then, because it was just kind of like him killing Yaddle and saying, like, if I can't bring order, let me at least give you peace, kind of thing. It was just like, no matter what, he's gonna try and see it through, even though it was obviously killing her. It was like he's still gonna do what he can to bring some sense of peace and order. I don't know. He's just an interesting character in general too, because whenever he's like seen as the villain in like the prequels, he's not really a villain. He's just a Jedi who's kind of lost his way, it seems. And he's just trying to do what he can for his master. But obviously in the end, he was just another pawn.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, I think that about does it for our discussion on the Dooku episodes. Before we wrap things up, are there any like other characters you think, like, let's say they do a season 2 of Tales of the Jedi, like maybe are there any other characters you can think of that you might want to see some backstory on? Or
well, there's a lot I could think of. I'd love to see something like Obi-Wan's background stories. Like, I've seen a couple like comics and legends, and I would love to see something like that. Ki-Adi-Mundi and Plo Koon from the I would love to see something about them, because they're just sort of like there, but I'd love to see more about them. Palpatine would also be a really great one.
Yeah,
because just sort of seeing him with his master.
Yeah, I would love for them if they do another Tales of the Jedi sort of thing. I would love for them to do another villain. So I think Palpatine would be great. I mean, Darth Maul would be great. I mean, we get a lot of a lot more stories with him, and obviously in the Clone Wars, the animated series. But it'd be cool to go even further back, and see a character like him. But yeah, Obi-Wan would be killer. I mean, it'd be nice. It's cool, like someone like Dooku, like, or like Jango Fett, like characters where we don't really get a lot of live action. Like they're kind of like, they have like their sort of memorable scenes from like the prequels, or characters that are even in the original trilogy or the sequel trilogy, characters that kind of just, leave a mark, but they don't have like a major arc. I think any character is sort of like that, where the character is like intriguing. Obviously, when you expand on someone like that, like with a Boba Fett, like him finally getting a series, it's cool to see like just more from them. And I think in this sort of animated, short sort of thing, it's easier to have success, because you can keep the stories tight. You can obviously include a lot of Easter eggs and utilize characters that are sort of fan favorites, or characters that fans have always been curious about, and leave some surprises in there. So, like with a series like Boba Fett, that was sort of like, I guess, mixed between a lot of Star Wars fans. Some episodes are better than the others. With something like an animated series, there's sort of like a low risk, high reward sort of thing. I think you could sort of have with these characters and telling these stories. So
yeah, certainly. And like one more thing with like the shorts though, is that I've heard a lot of complaints about like how they sort of jumped too much and you couldn't really get a true sense of it. But I'm like, it's a short.
It's a short.
So you're not supposed to fully see the development, but it's more so telling a story of someone that you're supposed to see how they ended, and more so what's going on that's sort of leading them to go to that point.
Yeah. I mean, and there's just too much going on. I mean, we had Andor, we had Bad Batch coming up.
Yeah.
Mandalorian's going to come out. Like there's really not like room for another, show that has a bunch of episodes and is trying to tell this grand story. We're lucky to get these, this is sort of like a bonus. So we should just be happy that we're getting, all this Star Wars content. And, I, for one, just, I'll take anything they throw at us. I agree. The shorts and the concept of doing these shorts, I think are really good. And I think these episodes are like around 15 minutes. I think it's a perfect amount of time, to tell a story about, again, these are not like a character like Dooku is not like this groundbreaking character in Star Wars. I mean, he's just a cool, intriguing character. And then like with Ahsoka side of it, we have so much Ahsoka story, and we're getting more Ahsoka in live action in her own series that, whatever we get in the animated shorts is just like, it's just an added treat. So we should, there could definitely be like Ahsoka fatigue if these were like longer and it was just all about Ahsoka. So I think splitting it between two characters and having these sort of bite-sized episodes was the right way to go about sort of a series like this.
Yeah, certainly. I'll agree to that one.
Yeah. So before we end things here, we just want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Star Wars, including Christopher A., Daphne B., Joseph L., Skyan O., and George T. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And just be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. To find previous episodes of Secrets of Star Wars or to send feedback, please visit sqpn.com/Star Wars. You can email us at StarWars@SQPN.com or follow StarQuest on social media at Facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on Twitter at SQPN. You could also join our Discord community at SQPN.com/Discord. Again, we'll be back next week to discuss the Ahsoka episodes. And until then, I just want to thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars. Josh?
Thank you for having me.
And I am Andrew Hermiz, and thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
Hi everyone, this is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of StarQuest, with a special message as we approach the Christmas season. This past year, the StarQuest Network has continued to expand our mission of exploring the intersection of faith and pop culture through our many entertaining and informative programs. Now we need your generous financial support to reach new audiences with more of the life-changing and uplifting programming we've been creating for more than a decade. That's why it's very important that we hear from you this Advent and Christmas, the time when nonprofits receive most of their support for the year. If you are already a supporter of StarQuest, we thank you and ask you to prayerfully consider increasing your support at this time. If you're not yet a supporter, please become one now. Every gift counts. Could you give $15 or even just $10 per month? Whatever level of support you can offer, please show your support for SQPN this Christmas. And remember that your gifts may be tax deductible. Just go to sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. May God bless you this Advent, and may you have a blessed Christmas season.